Hi, everyone. This week in Human Resource Management, we explore social equity. We hope that this week's topic helps you become more culturally aware and prepared to manage in an increasingly diverse workplace. That is one of the learning objectives for this course. Your reading this week includes the first 5 chapters in Achieving Social Equity. The first chapter defines terminology and outlines expectations and challenges faced by public administrators. Chapters 2 through 4 delve into specific demographics. Those include gender, LGBTQ persons, and Native American populations. Chapter 5 explores the intersection of identities. Intersectionality examines the ways that multiple social identities compound to create different lived experiences. Most of this presentation will focus on concepts from Chapter 1. Making our workplaces more diverse, equitable, and inclusive requires systemic change. I'll offer thoughts on why systemic change challenges leaders and expand on strategies offered in the book. As you will read, social equity is a core value and a professional expectation for public administrators. I think it's important to keep values at the forefront in our leadership, but you can expect to wrestle with competing values. In particular, the values of efficiency and social equity create conflict that has to be addressed. That social equity value is framed by 4 criteria. Procedural fairness entails due process, transparency, equal rights, and representativeness. Access is about the opportunity and ability to participate in processes and programs. Quality is the degree to which attributes surpass minimally acceptable levels. And outcomes are the effects that policies and programs produce. Outcomes are central to the concept of equity. Politically, it's much easier to justify equal inputs. It feels like that should be fair. Creating equal and fair outcomes, or equity, is a harder sell. Affirmative action programs are based on this concept, and you saw last week how divisive affirmative action can be. To change a system, it's important to understand that the system is the way it is because it benefits certain people. The systems in our country have historically benefited white males. The authors emphasize in Chapter 1 that to create balance out of imbalance requires perturbing the status quo. They warn that to challenge power is to invite blowback. This story from last week about the Trump administration ending all federal diversity training illustrates that the blowback can be very powerful. Leading systemic change, then, requires the courage to push back against powerful forces. It requires empathy that we talked about a couple of weeks back, and it requires effective strategies. Chapter 1 offers some strategic approaches. One approach that they term procedural emphasizes engaging citizens in the design process. If you take my strategy class in the spring, you'll find that I'm a proponent of this model of strategic change. The term I like to describe this approach is co-creation. We talked 2 weeks ago about the value of having employees who are engaged. It's also important to have citizens, the customers of our services, engaged. A co-creation approach seeks to engage all stakeholders in all phases of the change process. You engage them in diagnosing and defining problems, identifying creative strategies, and testing and refining solutions. If you want to learn more about the co-creation model, I encourage you to read an article from the Stanford Social Innovation Review titled Co-Creation in Government. I will share a link to the article in Moodle. This sidebar outlining principles of co-creation accompanies the article. I'll briefly highlight the concept of leveraging technology. Social applications make it possible to engage broad and diverse audiences in design processes. One government that has embraced the co-creation approach is the city of Calgary, Alberta. They build public engagement campaigns around specific themes using a tool called Idea Scale. If you visit the site today, you'll see that they just launched a campaign focused on combating systemic racism. The substantive strategic approach outlined in the book emphasizes outcomes. Good strategy always starts with the end in mind. You'll remember from an earlier slide that equity is about outcomes. Keep that focus in mind when working on your diversity plans. Finally, Guy and McCandless addressed the complexity of language surrounding social equity. Clear, simple language is critical to leadership and change efforts. In their book, Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard, Chip and Dan Heath suggest that what looks like resistance is often a lack of clarity. Clarity dissolves resistance. The naming, blaming, claiming approach seeks to use that concept. Its aim is to increase understanding and accountability using concrete language. I'll finish with this quote to re-emphasize that leadership requires empathy and courage. To lead change, it's necessary to understand and address difficult truths. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on Wednesday.